were set to hold their first.
There seems to be no end to the sadness and disappointment that separated families are facing. On September 21st, just 4 days before inter-Korean family reunions were set to begin, North Korea abruptly canceled them. The reunions would have been the first in 3 years. The motive was purely political for the North Koreans. Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reported on South Korea's response to the recent turn of events.
Plans to make a move this week.
The emotional turmoil that separated families had to go through is unimaginable. 85-year-old Hong Shin-ja remains devastated. She's waited 60 years to meet her sister again, but those hopes now appear shattered.
I feel like we'll never see each other again.
Reporter Connie Lee met with potential candidates for the inter-Korean family reunions who are suffering amid uncertainty, clinging to a last bit of hope that they'll meet their loved ones once again. The Boeing F-15 Silent Eagle had emerged as the sole candidate for Korea's next-generation fighter jet program. But on September 24th, the F-15SC did not get the nod. The government decided to pull the entire fighter jet bidding process back to square one. How did the selection process evolve over time, and what led to the project's sole candidate being rejected? Ministry of National Defense correspondent Da-eun had the story covered. The most concerning aspect of the recent decision is that the military remains without a viable alternative to its aging fleet of fighter jets. The government has its hands full with issues surrounding the selection of a next-generation fighter jet. Reporter Kim Hyun-bin followed this story in depth.
The evaluation process.
Run and keep running. Reporter Song Ji-sun heads to the field where intensity is at its highest and where the future is unpredictable. Korea's transportation hub, Seoul Station, is still quiet at this early hour. But Ji-sun is already there. She always chooses stories that take place at challenging locations. This time, her story takes her to the southern part of Korea.
잠깐만. 네. 이렇게인가 보다. 이게 금요일부터 개통을 해요, 일반인들한테.
아직 개통 안 한 거예요?
네. 근데 이거 생각보다 인기 되게 많아요. 그 태백에 오트레인도 있는데 그것도 막 매진되고 나도 한번 타보려고 했는데
별로 안 비싼 거 같아요.
근데 객실이 적어가지고 금방 매진되는 것 같았어.
Ji-sun hopes to take a ride on the S-train, which started operations this month. It is the first tourist train in Korea that travels around the southern coastal areas of the nation.
지금 다른 나라에도 이런 관광 상품들이 그러니까 우리가 이걸 벤치마킹 한 건가요? 아니면 좀 있나요? 해외 케이스가.
V 열차 같은 거는
네.
협동 열차 있잖아요.
무슨 열차요?
토로코 열차라고 토로코.
일본 거.
일본에 이제 각지에서 운영하고 있는 벤치마킹을
네.
좀 한 부분도 있고.
일단 5군데를 지금 개발하고 있잖아요.
네.
지금 지도상에 보면은
전체적으로 이렇게 5대
네.
관광벨트라고
네.
예, 거기를 개발하고 있습니다.
그럼 지금 일단 개통된 게 이 구간하고
예, 이게 OV 트레인 요거 하고
네.
S 트레인.
여기는 아직 네.
이게 지금 개통된 거는 중부 내리권과 남도
남도
해안권입니다. 네.
First of all, the seasonal or timely point is very important to me. We're now entering fall after a sweltering heat of summer, and a lot of people are seeking new places or new trends to go out and have fun with trip with families. And of course, the location this time was very important because it was the southern region of Korea. And of course, train is a new transportation. People opt out to travel over cars because they want to get away from driving long hours. And the Korea has actually launched several projects to help people make those choices of using trains, actually very outdated trains that were used like quite years ago.
7시 35분에 출발하는 KTX 산천 광주에
The long round-trip journey has started and it is expected to last between 8 and 9 hours.
일단 걸도 가서 점심 먹고 그다음에
등량에서 옛날 작물이랑 다른 것 같아요.
Although she could have taken a short break, Ji-sun is busy preparing for her story. Finally, they arrive at Suncheon Station, from where the S train will depart. Ji-sun runs as soon as she arrives and takes a look around.
혹시 기차가 이렇게 좀 들어오거나 빠지는 그것도 이따가
지금
네네.
What will the inside of the S train look like? She looks around.
여기가 끝이네.
The S train shares its personality with the southern part of Korea, and this regional atmosphere is accentuated all around the train.
이제 멈췄다. 멈췄다.
Well, the first thing I did when I arrived at the location was that I went through all the cabins to actually see what it's like, the passages and the carriages, and like how people move in and out of the train, so I can actually tell my camera crew to like how to shoot and follow people within the train itself. I think it was very impressive that each carriage was themed in a different topics, such as that tea ceremonial train, as well as healing room, and of course event room, so people actually watch a concert on board. And there's very little chance you could feel bored and riding on that kind of a train. So I think, this is actually very entertaining. This could be a new way of spending time while also traveling from a city to another.
Now that she's done checking inside the train, Ji-sun hurries back out. She doesn't want to miss out on an explanation of the S train, which will be taking her to the far end of southern Korea.
혹시 이제 지역의 융합이라고도 할 수 있는데 취지라던가 어떤 목적이 있다면 또 어떤 걸 들 수 있을까요?
이 선로가 영원함을 연결시켜 줍니다. 그래서 우리 S트레인이 운행함으로써 서로 양쪽 사람들이 만나고 문화가 만나고 서로 관광을 해주고 또 먹거리를 사주고 이게 진정한 그 동서 합이 아닐까 생각합니다.
네, 말씀하셨듯이 경제적인 효과도 무시할 수가 없는데 O트레인이나 V트레인 같은 경우도 고용 유발 같은 효과가 많이 나타나는 걸로 있어요. S트레인은 또 어느 정도의 경제 유발 효과가 좀 있을지.
우리가 열차가 가는 곳이 주로 그 시골 간이역들입니다. 그야말로 요즘 농촌이 많이 힘들어하잖아요. 그래서 이 열차가 가는 그 시골 간이역의 그 지역 경제가 아마 많이 살아날 것입니다. 그 지역 주민들은 좋은 농산물을 와서 팔고 또 우리 관광객들은 그야말로 청정 지역에 이 좋은 먹거리를 먹을 수 있고 그래서 그 직접적인 효과뿐만 아니고 간접적으로 보면은 이 수백억의 효과가 있을 걸로 생각이 됩니다.
감사합니다.
The S train finally starts to leave.
되게 인상적인 게 충전할 수 있게 자리마다 또 콘센트가
그렇죠.
있더라고요.
요즘 추세가 충전기 없으면 휴대폰 없으면 사망이죠. 각 의자마다 충전기 다 해놨고요.
From Suncheon Station to Polgyo, Deoknyang, and Gwangju, Ji-sun organizes the day's schedule when she can. Some 200 test passengers got on the S train, and the excitement can be seen on their faces. There are some people immersed in the experience of drinking tea inside a cabin that's been designed for people to sit on the floor. It's the first such cabin in Korea. Ji-sun makes sure she gets every expression of the passengers on camera.
안녕하세요. 혹시 오늘 여기 어떻게 오시게 됐어요? 가족분이세요? 서울에서 오신 거예요? 아침에 새벽에 이렇게. 아, 그러시구나. 어떤 열차에 대해서 또 설명은 좀 들으셨어요?
열차에 대해서 블로그 같은 걸 먼저 들어봤는데요. 남부해양 관광열차라고 해서 우선 이런 게 생소하잖아요. 그래서 기대를 하고 왔어요.
The train stops at the first destination. The highlight of the S train is the way stations come to life once the train stops. The quiet town starts to bustle with visitors. At Pulgyo in South Jeolla province, there are streets that once used to be the venue for street fights. The streets still have the feeling of the past. Only 1 hour is given at Pulgyo before the train leaves. A fast decision has to be made on what to focus on for the story. Just then, people flock to one building. The Bosong Inn, which was built in 1935, it stands as a precious piece of history that has been preserved for 80 years. The camera captures the place, which is now maintained as a cultural asset. It's time for the train to leave and Ji-sun starts to run again. But just then,
남자분들 두 분 아직 안 오셨는데?
an unexpected situation happens.
When we did stop at Pulgyo station, we had very short amount of time eating lunch, shooting the people, and getting back on a train, all less than an hour. And our camera crew went out to the market to actually shoot the people there. And I had to run back to the train because I was obviously slower than them. So I did get back to the station first, and we waited for several more minutes, and they did not arrive. And the train had to leave.
아, 안 돼요. 같이 타야 돼요. 아, 근데 무조건 같이 타야 돼요. 이거 여기서 지금 스탠딩이랑 인터뷰를 같이 따야 돼서. 여보세요? 잠깐만, 빨리 뛰어와. 빨리 뛰어와, 빨리. 아, 뭐라고? 아, 진짜. 아, 전화를 안 받아 그럼.
What a surprise! The camera team was already on the train.
So I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. And I was just like sitting on the seat. It's like I was really, really shocked and relieved at the same time in those just several couple of minutes.
The train starts to leave as if nothing happened and the coverage resumes. A tea drinking event catches people's attention.
네, 예쁜 미소를 머금고 한번 향을 맡아보겠습니다.
There's a lot of enthusiasm covering the story.
새롭고 재밌고 뭔가 특이한 것 같아요.
다른 그 기차 여행하고 비교했을 때 또 어떤 점이 좀 인상 깊으셨어요?
다른 기차 여행보다 뭔가 좀 이렇게 좌식으로 가는 건 없는데 열차 안에 내부도 다르고 좌식으로 갈 수 있는 게 굉장히 독특한 것 같아요.
감사합니다. 성함이 어떻게 되세요? 한자 영자요? 20대셨어요.
The second train stop is Tuknyang Station.
여기 80년대 건물들 같은 거는
네.
일부러 조성을 한 게 아니고
아니요, 그대로 살아있는데. 그럼 가봅시다. 내가 안내할게 있죠.
The scenery takes visitors down memory lane, all the way to the 1970s. The rural village explains everything Ji-sun wants to deliver in her story.
오늘 다방 영업이 잘 되는가 모르겠네.
The coffee house has been in business since 1977. There are many items that are considered to be antiques.
일단은 여기 있으니까 드세요.
기분 좀 심하신 거 아니야?
네, 한 잔씩 하세요. 드세요.
아, 섭렵하셨네요.
다들 오래됐습니다.
이거 매실하고 또 뭐가 들어간 거예요?
일절 매실하고 그때 당시 20년 전에 설탕.
매실이 이렇게 진해요?
예.
어떻게 농도도 그렇고.
나눠도 나눌수록
30년 내내 쭉 계셨던 거예요?
한간만 해도 30년.
Jisun thinks about the economic effect of a place filled with such memories.
그럼 이제 손님들 많이 오시고 하면은 좀 이렇게 매출도 오를 거라고 이제 좀 기대가 많이 되시나요? 어떠세요?
혼자 힘으로는 할 수 없는데 이렇게 군에서 협조해 주시고 또 관광열차가 이게 된다. 여기서 많이 신경을 써주시고 협조해 주신 어른들 덕분에 이렇게 됐나 싶어서 너무 감사합니다.
네, 말씀 너무 감사드립니다.
네.
차도 너무 잘 마셨어요.
네,
사장님.
항상
감사합니다.
건강하시고
감사합니다.
행복한 날 보내십시오.
Size of the station we stop at via S train are very small way stations, meaning they're very small size, not like the large KTX stations where hundreds of thousands of people use every day. And it's also very local. You can actually look at the trees and pass through the little streets of a lot of people. Actually, very little people live in those cities. And I think it was very helping the local economy and the towns to actually attract a lot of people who are getting off the train. And you could also see like very old-fashioned buildings and the street. In case, for example, Tungyang, the street itself is it's not renovated. It stays the same way from the 1980s, and you could get a reminiscence of your memories, especially if you're in your 40s or 50s. You could hear the music at restaurants and the cafes that we also interviewed, and I think those were very impressive and very moving for a lot of people seeking and who are actually looking to go back to the time when they were younger and happier.
The story is coming to an end after 10 hours of coverage, which started early in the morning.
우리가 원래 돈도 내고 이렇게 하려고 돈 냈는데 어느 순간 사람들이 나가보니까 사람들에게 돈 내는데.
The on-site coverage is filled with unexpected situations, and it's impossible to go back and correct mistakes. But reporter Song Ji-sun has found that such factors make these kinds of stories more fun, which is one reason she's so eager to be part of it all.
This was one of the lighter and softer news I wanted to cover, and this time I try to include as much different aspects of society and economic factors as well in this S-train or other train project that Korea was launching. So I try to actually ask the people how much they're expecting, or how much income an increase they're expecting, as well as how many passengers they're planning to carry throughout the S-train. And I think it's a new way of creating resources for the locals as well as the train industry and reusing the old trains that were outdated, such as 무궁화, which are renovated to be used for this S-train project. And I think it's one of the new points of creating new economy and creating jobs as well from the same industry we already have the infrastructure. We just did not make use of this infrastructure we already had. So that was the point I try to convey the most throughout this coverage.
Welcome. I cannot kiss you because I have a lot of makeup.
Yeah, oh good.
You got the questions and everything? I got the questions. Where can I put them?
Oh, just here.
Just here?
So we'll be up there on the set. So I think they wanted us to talk a little bit about. Do you think there's anything missing from the discussion?
No, I think generally there is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot to talk about actually.
Exactly.
I was naturally drawn to the situation of what is happening in North Korea. Nobody tells them what they have to do any longer.
But what do you want the main focus, of your, you have so many different messages. What do you want the main thing to kind of sound like at the end?
I think greater involvement of South Korean society. International response is very important, but in the end, it's South Korea that will deal with the situation in North Korea.
And live with it, and should lead.
Yes. So it's not international society that will do that. So that's why it should lead toward the improvement of the situation.
Okay.
That's what I want to say.
Right. When you talk about human rights, what are people most surprised about when you tell them about some of the details?
The other day I posted online saying that about 40% of children are coming here without parents. So they will be staying during the holidays alone. And we are one of the organizations that are helping these children and youth. And if you can, please consider donations. And some people were so mean that they, for example, commented, why do they come here? They want to have just simple life. Why, if it's so bad in North Korea, Koreans, it was Koreans, why don't rebel like in Libya and Syria? So I think it's one thing that people still do not understand. People think we also had authoritarian regime here. People don't realize what kind of regime, what kind of totalitarian regime is there, full control, that people even cannot think to rebel like in Syria, Libya and everywhere.
Or even in South Korea.
Yeah. Or even in South Korea, exactly.
Were there any moments where you're doing your work and you felt like, oh, this is so hard, this is so difficult, I want to give up?
I think every activist has such moment. It's just so overwhelming at a certain point, and then you also realize that nothing is really changing in that country. Why am I doing this? There is no impact, One thing that really is helping me is a person in Poland. She was underground human rights activist during Solidarity movement and so on. And she told me that we will never see the result of our work.
Right.
We couldn't predict it. We were just working.
It came unexpectedly.
It came unexpectedly.
And that's kind of hope for you.
Yes, and she said, you have to realize that if the change comes, it comes unexpectedly. You can never predict it. You can never, you just, have to have this dim hope that something will happen. Especially human stories.
Right.
I have so many of them in my head. And recently when I was doing these interviews and the interviews about disabled people in North Korea, it just hit me so hard that for several weeks I couldn't really work well. I have a disabled sister, so I was thinking, what if she was born there? If they treated her like that,
right.
And that hit me so badly that I realized that, I cannot do it any longer.
Right.
But it was a moment, when you kind of hit this kind of low bottom, and
right.
then you think, no, I have to do it. Who else will do that? I have to.